It's the one time of year the Birch Gold Group gives away free gold with every qualifying purchase. That's right, for Black Friday, when you convert an existing IRA or a 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, the Birch Gold Group will send you free gold to your home for every $20,000 it's purchased. Gold started this year around $2,600 an ounce. By October, it was over $4,000 an ounce. Why, you ask? Well, you can blame global uncertainty. 2025 has been defined by trade wars. Central banks are even pulling from the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency, and the military tension that we're seeing around the world, well, it continues to build. Gold thrives in times of uncertainty, though. If you're looking to diversify your savings, the Birch Gold Group can help. Plus, now through November 30th, get free gold with a qualifying purchase. Just text the word America to the number 989898 to claim your eligibility and for a free information kit on gold. But your opportunity for free gold with purchases ends on November 30th. So don't wait. Instead, grab your phone right now and text the word America to the number 989898 for full details. President Trump and presumably the First Lady will head south this evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Terrence Bates. Thursday, however, they were together at the White House for the signing of the president's latest executive order, which creates jobs for young people who are aging out of foster care. The order also creates access to health care and food security for those young people.
Too many people from foster care community end up homeless, in danger on America's streets. It was 2021 when I developed the idea to establish an impactful platform with an important mission to provide individuals from the foster care community the ability to secure an entry-level job position and, in turn, financial independence.
President Trump says under this new initiative, American companies and institutions will sign pledges to invest in teaching, training, and mentoring America's youth. That's a quick check of your headlines.
This movement will not be silenced. You're listening to The Charlie Kirk Show.
All right, listen, Charlie built a thriving community through conversation, and he did a lot of that on TikTok. Billions and billions of views on TikTok. It's not something that happened overnight. It happened over time, one connection at a time, one video at a time. TikTok offers opportunities for respectful exchange of ideas, and through that, community. No, not to talk over each other, but to talk with each other. On TikTok, you'll find creators who teach and encourage, a carpenter passing on his craft, a mom explaining how to make a budget stretch, or a gardener showing us how to bring a backyard back to life. Different stories, same drive, to the desire to connect and to understand. That's what makes a strong community, a common desire to connect. That's the power of TikTok. It gives everyone a seat at the table, a place to speak, to listen, to remind each other that we are all humans and that we need to connect. Conversations build connections, and connections build communities. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are sponsored in part by TikTok. I'm very excited about the next guest that we're going to have on the show here, and that is Andy Ngo. He's a reporter for the Millennial. He's also the author of the book Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. And you can also check out his writings at No Comment, which I think is great, but it's ngocomment.com. It's a Substack, ngocomment.com. Andy Ngo, welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show. It's good to see you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you for many moons now, Andy, but it's great to see you and great to have you. And you've been doing tremendous work covering, I mean, you've always done tremendous work covering Antifa. You've been one of the most fearless journalists about this. And you have a new piece where you're talking about this huge development where Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the Trump administration have designated them as a foreign terrorist organization. And you have a great write-up on the Millennial about this. Explain to our audience that might be a little unsure of why this is important versus the previous executive order that designated them a domestic terror group.
Thank you for having me on. So when I spoke at the White House roundtable on Antifa, one of the things that I suggested to the president and his cabinet that they could do is to look at the international networks and organizations within Antifa and to designate the applicable ones as FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations. And why that's so important is because unlike the categorization of domestic terrorism, there's actually legislation and a legal category of a foreign terrorist organization. And the announcement from Secretary Rubio with Antifa-Ost and 3 other European-based Antifa groups and networks being declared FTOs, these are now on the same category as ISIS, as al-Qaeda, and other proscribed terrorist groups that your listeners and viewers may have heard of. This is very different than when people in the administration talking about Antifa being domestic terrorists. And the key difference is that there's actually no legal category in the US for domestic terrorism in terms of like a group cannot be declared that way and then be banned. So the executive order describes Antifa as such, but it's not like a law that would ban providing support for Antifa domestically or to have membership in a violent group that's within the Antifa network. And that's because of First Amendment protections. I'm speaking to you from London now, and in my travels in the UK and Europe, when I speak to liberals or leftists, they say, well, how come the US hasn't banned the KKK or like neo-Nazi groups? And the reason is the First Amendment has been interpreted through the courts to provide very wide protections for associations. So, but that doesn't mean that the executive orders and what the administration now is doing domestically doesn't matter. There's been, very importantly, at the federal level, the DOJ was able to get 2 indictments against alleged members of an Antifa cell in North Texas, indicted on providing material support to terrorism. You see, so like that's where that focus that the administration has on Antifa and terrorism matters rather than the label domestic terrorist. But going back to FTO, it's the first time in U.S. history that the U.S. government has declared any Antifa-associated group as being officially terrorist.
So, yeah, and you write in the Post-Millennial, you said the FTO label is not symbolic. It's a legal tool under U.S. law enabling sanctions against individuals associated with the groups, asset freezes, travel bans, and criminal penalties for membership or providing material support. In short, it's now a federal crime to belong to or assist the 4 violent Antifa anarchist groups that were labeled, and there's some in Greece and Italy and Germany that you outline in there. Now, I want to bring our attention back domestically, though, Andy, because at this UC Berkeley event, I noticed that at least from the videos I saw, there wasn't many of these Antifa thugs wearing black bloc, right? It is intentionally decentralized. It is intentionally without hierarchy, at least, you know, on a spreadsheet in an org chart, right? So what is the way that these groups are organized domestically, and they're going to shift their tactics as the government attempts to crack down on them? Where do you see this going, and what can you just explain to us about the hierarchy question?
So for the last 5 years, within the organized militant Antifa American groups, such as Rose City Antifa and other groups that are within the Torch Antifa network in cities like New York, Asheville, Philadelphia, they've moved more underground. You'll see that they have been posting a lot less on social media. When they have had a presence at Direct Actions, they no longer show the logos and symbols of their particular organization. And I think that's because they've seen in some jurisdictions there's been ongoing domestic terrorism investigations, like in the state of Georgia, where 61 people were indicted on domestic terrorism charges. There was a cell in San Diego County where 12 members of SoCal Antifa were convicted, either at trial or through plea deals. So they're trying to go underground and bunker down until there's a Democrat administration where they can come out. But whether or not they're underground, it doesn't mean they don't exist and they don't organize. And a lot of the terrorism that Antifa does involves people who are actually not going to their meetings or have not been through their particular cell vetting process. And that's the decentralized nature of a lot of terrorist groups, actually internationally as well, in that they put out the ideology online, or there are certain social media accounts that put out the propaganda. And the goal is to get fellow travelers, sympathizers, or ideologues to go and do something, just show up and commit violence. And I think that was seen in some part at what happened at UC Berkeley. This is their playbook. They call the targets fascists and Nazis and use inflammatory rhetoric and lies and get a mob to show up and create an environment where people, their comrades, are encouraged to commit assaults or intimidate or harass or to rob their particular targets. And going back to the 4 groups that have been declared FTOs, I think it's important to talk about what they have done in Europe. These groups have not been proscribed because of ideology. And if people read my article piece or they look at what the State Department put out, one of the groups is Antifa-Ost, which translates to Antifa East. And they're a Germany-based Antifa group where their method of attack is to mob beat their targets with batons and hammers. And they go specifically for breaking bones, smashing skulls open. Some of their members have been convicted of aggravated assault and attempted murder. Some of the other groups that were declared FTOs based in Italy and in Greece have been involved in bombings and shootings of CEOs and bombings of police stations. So these are terrorist groups. And yet we still see some leftists coming out, unsurprisingly, to defend Antifa in the wake of this announcement from the State Department.
Yeah, looking at the FBI's definition for terrorism, it's the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce the government, civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. So there, if it's the definition of terrorism, that's exactly what we saw at UC Berkeley. Charlie used to always say that people would hide their face when they secretly know that what they're doing is wrong. And so these people know that what they're doing is wrong. They secretly know that this is terrorism. But my question to you, Andy, is how are these people communicating with each other? They have a tendency to show up in mass numbers. Who's secretly funding this stuff? How are they all getting funded? I just don't feel like we always get the answers to this. I'd love any insight that you have on that.
So the communications amongst the cells is primarily done through Signal, and we can know that by looking at what's come out at trials and in criminal indictments. Going back to the Texas terror attack on the ICE facility in Alvarado on the 4th of July, they were able to get into the Signal communications of the members of this North Texas Antifa cell, and each one had aliases. And in the SoCal Antifa case in San Diego last year, when that went to trial, the evidence came out, Signal was also used. That is primarily the mode of communication. They use burner phones, aliases, obviously, and then they create ad hoc group chats for different purposes on Signal. Regarding the funding, there's always a nexus of registered nonprofits. And Azra Nomani has a good piece that came out 2 days ago on Fox News about one of the nonprofits that was involved in organizing the UC Berkeley direct action. But a lot of the funding is also through essentially what is just crowdfunding. The extreme far left are great at crowdfunding. They create GoFundMes, they have Cash App handles, Venmo handles, PayPal even. And those types, so a lot of it is done in places that law enforcement can track. And in my reporting and what I hope that the FBI starts paying attention to, now that they have a directive from the executive that Antifa are domestic terrorists, is to look into the sources of funding. We're not talking about dark money and crypto and things like that, although that may be part of it. For the most part, it's through people organizing these campaigns and sharing the links. You and your listeners and viewers are familiar with those huge fundraisers to raise bail money for riot suspects.
Yeah, we're coming up against a hard break. I wish we had you for more time, but that's Andy Ngo, reporter for the Post Millennial, author of Unmasked, and you can check him out at his Substack, No Comment, NGO Comment. Thank you, Andy Ngo. So good to see you.